Welcome to Turn 5 of Gary Grigsby's War in the East, a Soviets campaign. And on this turn, the Axis has continued their push. It is another turn of intense combat, and we lost another 150,000 guys, which is not great, but it also does mean that the era of ultra high casualties is over. We got through all the pocketings and surrenderings, losing probably less than 1 million guys, which doesn't sound like something you should brag about, but compared to historically, it's probably pretty good. The Axis pushed us on every front. They pushed some of our started grinding more towards Leningrad, pushed the Northwestern Front away from the Smolensk land bridge and pushed further into that, assaulting and in some cases overtaking the Dnieper line, especially down here in the south. They pushed us off the Dnieper line and are pushing us into like they're pushing further into the Pripyat. And then on the southern front, they didn't do much up here, but the southwestern front rather, the Germans pushed us in a major way in the Podoludia area, and back towards this sort of in between Podoludia and Nikolaev area of Ukraine. And in the very south, they widened their gap, pushed us off of any remains of the Dniester we'd been on, and are pushing well into Transnistria with the entire looks like the entire Romanian army. Excuse me. The events looks like the Finns are capturing areas around Lake Ladoga, so Leningrad is threatened from the north as well as from the south. That's pretty bad. The RAF conducted more raids, which is amazing, and Winston Churchill invented the victory sign, later to be the peace sign. So isn't that great? I don't know if he invented it, but the historical blurb says he did it. Doesn't have anything about anyone else. Air phase for this turn. We are going to have to start putting some more of these motherfuckers in retreat. I have no idea. Baltic's supposed to be on retreat. I have no idea why they're still in here. Leningrad, there's nowhere to really retreat them to, but they should be on retreat. Northwestern Air Command should also be on retreat. Western is flexible is fine, but there is no reason why transport aircraft should be that close to the front. And these guys are probably in a stupid spot as well. Southwestern is fine on flex. Southern Air Command needs to be set back to retreat again. Other than that, these lesser air commands can just keep doing what they're doing. Hawkeye. Southern Front time. Well, if we look at the battles here, it looks like we are going to have to retreat behind these minor rivers in Transnistria, and we'll still keep defending Odessa, but it's not great. But if you look at them, the Germans are starting to actually take losses. Well, the Romanians are at least. And they're starting to require a little more effort in moving our stuff. So that makes me hopeful. But it is going to be another retreat turn. Then up here, we're actually going to just get the Southern Front off this line and turn it over to the Southwestern Front, as thin as that'll stretch them. But we're going to have to get some of these depleted tank units back to refit, hopefully start building the second line. This is where our difficulty entrenchment penalty is hurting us, because a lot of these tiles would actually have real entrenchment by now if we didn't have that. Granted, Odessa does, so that's good. I'm not going to put this guy into the Odessa fortress yet. I'm going to just keep him out there because he'll keep on creating fortification levels in the city that way. But if we end up with this guy can only move one, if we end up having to stack more guys into Odessa, then we can do that. I am going to make a stand here. They will end up beating me and probably taking down divisions that I wouldn't have to lose necessarily, but again, it's a make them do it sort of thing. Southern Front debriefing. Here's our new line. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but it is a finally starting to be a double line, so hopefully we delay them along this one, this creek, for long enough for our forces along the next one to start getting fortifications, though again that debuff is going to really hurt us. Hopefully they also have to spend some time around Odessa. Now I have a gap in the line that's going to have to be covered by the Southwestern Front. So for the Southwestern Front, uh, going back to battles, you can see that we took quite a beating. We did have a pretty good second line established, though some of these units are going to be really bad off. We're going to try to get out of this little salient right here, though we may keep some mountain divisions on the hill hexes, though this one is probably not defensible. But in general, the Southwestern Front in this sector is going to just shift back and start a temporary defensive line in this area that will turn into a more defensive line, more of a permanent defensive line along the Yuzhny Bug if it doesn't get too badly outflanked. We're also going to shift some units from here probably to the north to actually try to stop this German thrust head on, and we're going to give our armor out and back. This area is pretty strong, and we're probably going to just keep trying to defend it, though again some of our weaker divisions are going to have to be pulled back and refitted. So that's well, I'm not sure if any of this is still defensible. We may not have the unit density for it, but we do need to start refitting and getting some kind of a second line set up down here. We may end up needing to bring in reinforcements. We may end up needing to assign these guys to the Southern Front so that the Southwestern Front can be less overloaded. Now up in the north of the South, as opposed to the south of the north, I think we're just going to try to hold in the Pripyat area, though this line might retreat a little bit depending on what we do down here. And we're going to be moving these new Stavka units into the gap and probably try to get this into a solid line, because I think we've got good defensive terrain between us and the Germans, so unless we're outflanked to the north and south, we can actually defend within the Pripyat, and they've got these wonderful hills that are right next to the swamp for some reason, so we're definitely going to try to defend this area pretty strongly. Again, some of our units, we might need to consolidate and shorten the line to get some of our units more south towards the main German thrust, but we'll see about it. Alright. As far as the Southwestern Front goes, I'm not liking how this looks. It's pretty weak around the flanks, which is not something you want to say about a bulge in your lines. It might have been a little greedy to try to hold on to some of these mountain hexes, but we'll see where it ends up for us next turn. In the middle, I've actually made the direct line of German advance come up against some very strong units that they could push through some of the weaker units up here, but I've managed to get also a lot of these tank units that need refits off the front line, and I'm starting to rebuild those up, so hopefully we can delay the Germans with this strong infantry rifle corps that we've brought up from the south long enough for some of our tank units to get rebuilt. This depleted unit I've just had go all the way back. We'll also hopefully get some fortifications going up. Our line is pretty unfortified. This is another risky area. If they push us on the sides, I could lose a fairly strong tank unit in this city, but again, I think the make 'em take it button is better in this area. And then of course in the Pripyat, I have done a little bit of a withdrawal from the this outmost bulge. It does give up some very good defensive forests, but I don't think this is really sustainable in terms of the flanks. However, we do now have a strong line all the way through the marshes. We have some fortifications going up on the front and some fortifications going up on the second line, so that should stop them well before they reach Kiev. We also have these hill hexes that are going to be very good for us. Now, let's look at our Western Front, which is much much less than terrain than it used to be. This area, it's going to be easy. We just withdraw, and we'll probably try to make this for the responsibility of some of those other alternate front units. They can advance all the way through here, and it doesn't really affect us because they could cut this railway, but that's it. Like, they're not going to outflank Kiev through this area. That's ignorant. So that's not that bad. However, the Dnieper line has been basically totally blasted in the southern sector, and we've got a bunch of weak units that we're going to have to pull back and refit and build up some kind of line here. So our new units that are coming off of trains are probably going to end up doing that. We also have a small pocket here, but still, 2 divisions in a pocket is not good. It's better than the early war shit, but that's not saying a whole lot. We're going to keep our guy on Mogilov. It may end up in this strong armored unit getting pocketed, but I think that continuing to defend the Dnieper in this sector is going to be a good bet for us. We're also going to have to defend the Dnieper where it becomes a minor river up here near Smolensk. So that'll be good and fun and exciting. And we're going to continue probably to fight on the front near Smolensk and just give Smolensk more and more time to fortify. This is a very strong hex. It's possible that I'm giving up way too much on the flanks to defend this hex, but I do think that it's pretty, like, it's a pretty good defense that is really the linchpin of this whole area. If it goes down, then the rest of this becomes basically not defensible, and we have to retreat into this difficult terrain, which, you know, might be good for us, might be better for our chances, but we don't want to give it up if we have to. And it's also, as long as we have it, it really prevents the Germans from going up north. As you can see in this region, the main rail line heads through Smolensk, and there's only a few rail lines in here that can support armies in this rough terrain. We're basically dependent on like 2 rail lines in here, so that might cause problems further north, but that's whatever. So we're just going to try to make as best we can out of this. Oh, and by the way, in the south, we've done a little bit of command restructuring. I'll show you that. Like, we've got the blue hexes are where you can see, like, our shows subordinate units and parent units. Yellow hexes show the parent units. So we've got this in here. We may want to bring in another army and have one army take this one and one army take that one, because right now it's the third armies, and we may end up splitting off some guys from the SouthWestern Front, because again, it is very over extended. This guy is okay-ish. I don't think I want to dismiss him. Who is his name? Kirpanis. Just to show you what it looks like. Yeah, you see the HHQ, and then you do that, and you click on it, and it takes a while, so I'm not going to show a lot of it, but I did want to show that. The Western Front is finally somewhat in order. We have made the southern flank the purview of the Kharkov military district, and then we've made the northern flank the purview of the Orel military district. In fact, we've made the entire Smolensk area the Orel military district under the 29th Army, and we've put another better dude in charge of it. So hopefully this will provide us a pretty strong defense in the immediate Smolensk area. As for the middle of our line, let's go the north middle. We've got a fairly strong defense still along the Dnieper, though we may have to abandon this if we get outflanked. We've got a kind of a double line going here with some units refitting on the second line, and we've got some pretty strong hexes. Actually, you may want to move down here. I don't know if 2 units will defend this better than 1, but we're going to try. Then further to the south, this is more of a mess near the Gomel area. Hopefully we won't lose it. We've moved up some reinforcement units, though we've had to make a front line out of refit units. This is definitely weak. We'll probably want to move in more units by train into this area. But it should only need 3 or 4 divisions to stabilize this, but we'll see what happens. We've got lots of really weak divisions that we're moving those guys back to refit, so hopefully they won't actually see combat. The Germans may need to take a turn or two to consolidate around here. So on the Northwestern Front, we're going to have to kind of get our southern edge into shape. We'll probably make one of these new Stavka armies into give it responsibility for the units around here and then assign it to the Northwestern Front. We're just going to have to decide where to put the good units, because we've got some severely beaten units in this area, and then we've got some not so great units holding the line. The good thing we do have on our side is we've got excellent terrain, so they can beat us up in the open, but we do have good terrain to retreat to. We're just going to try to hold as best we can, or I'm going to try to hold as best I can. I'd love to move this line up a bit, but I'm willing to bet that we're not going to get that opportunity. We're just going to need to dig in where we can and get our reserve units to start digging secondary lines. Up more in the north, hopefully, again, the rain will stop the German advance somewhat, and getting more divisions off the trains to the front will hopefully allow us to pull back some of these armored units to refit for our eventual counteroffensive we're going to have to do in this sector. If we keep this area, then a counteroffensive at Pskov would be great in the fall or winter, but that's a long way away. These 3 units are going to be going forward, and these other units are probably going to all have to go and reinforce the Leningrad front, which is what we're going to be talking about next. But yeah, that's the story for the Northwestern Front. It is in pretty bad shape, but I've seen it in worse. Well, wait, no, I haven't. It was worse in history. Yeah, that's the excuse I'm going with. So in the south of the Northwest, we've got a decent-ish line. We may need to train in some more reinforcements here to make this. We probably will. Most of these units are on refit, but we've got a line in rough terrain, if nothing else, and if they get pushed back, we'll be able to make more lines in rough terrain, pretty much all the way back to Moscow, where, as you can see, lots of reinforcements. Now, over here, in a more southerly part of the front, we've set up a reasonable-ish kind of line. This depleted unit should not be anywhere near the front line. Let's switch it out. So we've got a reasonable-ish line, though these units are all somewhat weak. This unit is probably the best we have on the front. We did put our strong riflemen reinforcements directly into the teeth of the German advance, so they'll either get beat up and clapped and all our units will be weak, or they'll do some work and stop the Germans. But we've got a line in defensive terrain and more reserve lines in defensive terrain coming up. We're definitely going to be strongly defending Veliki Luki. It is the rail depot that all these train lines go into and go out of. So there's only 2 lines that run through this region, and so we need them. Otherwise, this becomes unhinged from its supply, and so the rail lines are starting to become very important because there's lots of rough terrain where there's no supply. Speaking of that, I've got a rather weak line in this sector. However, I think it will end up being okay. It is raining, and the Germans don't exactly have a strong line here either. If they push here, they have to take troops away from the Leningrad front. So I think we're on a reasonable shape in the center, even though we're not actually like in reasonable shape. We've got more divisions coming up, but the rain and mud is delaying us now, so that's all right. I've moved our actual HQ back a little bit, and I've moved our air HQ back significantly, but uh, that'll be okay. For the Leningrad front, I think on the Baltic Islands, I'm going to transfer these guys to the Leningrad or just to Stavka. Same with Tallinn. There's no reason they should be in the Northwestern Front anymore. The German army continues to march through Estonia. It's doing its job. The Narva line is basically unhinged, but I'm still going to leave it in place, just on the in case we can contain this German block. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this security unit. He might stay there sacrificially, or he might just move back. Um, let's look at the fights. Yeah, they pushed us fairly hard off of this. This is the real fight. Jesus Christ, not good for us. These are not good numbers for us. But that is giving us time to fortify around Novgorod, and we do have a lot of units that came in by train, so we're going to do a lot of reshuffling. Probably these depleted units, we're going to try to get them. Oh, geez, you can't even move. All right, this guy can. We're going to try to get them around Leningrad, where they'll refit and entrench, and then the rest of the guys are going to, like the stronger units, are going to come forward and try to populate these lines, while the units already here, the militia units and stuff, are going to be refitting. We are is this the Novgorod Hex, or is that the Novgorod Hex? That's the Novgorod Hex. We are going to be strongly defending Novgorod, or reasonably defending Novgorod. It'll probably fall. But we should be able to form a couple of defensive lines. I don't know if they'll hold. It just really, this entire sector depends on where the Germans want to push. If we had strong units, if it was later in the war, then we could really pinch them at Pskov and cause massive headaches for this army. And so hopefully this area ends up stabilizing, and we end up being able to do that later on. But as for now, I'm just going to have to block off the Leningrad area as best I can and try to hold it. It's going to suck if the Narva line gets attacked from this direction instead of from that direction, but we will see. We may end up having to evacuate. We also have very good rail networks in this area, with not very good rail networks coming up to it. So if we are able to defend this area, that will be very good for us. So the lines are in place, and we've done a little bit of army reorganizing. Now we've got our armies are kind of, hey, missed you. Kind of more, a little bit more rational now. We've got the 11th Army defending here, and the 8th Army in charge of the Novgorod area. So that's good-ish. This isn't a great-looking line, but it is rough terrain and rain, so the Germans might have a difficult time cracking it. I do think that with this setup of forces, the Narva line is probably well and truly undermined, though we might be able to use it as part of a horizontal defensive line. I don't think this southern Narva stuff will last. Unfortunate, we did put a lot of effort into it, and it just is going to end up completely undermined. We'll also have to bring in more reinforcements to this area. I've pulled out the units that are weakest, and they're going to sit there refitting and reinforcing on Leningrad. Is this guy, can you go into the... I wonder if you can go... No, you're not on City Fort. This is immobile, but I think it can I think we can go into the Orienbaum Fortress. Yeah, so that's fine since it was immobile anyway. So we may want to move in more guys into Orienbaum to continue to fortify that town, and we will be able to inhabit that fortress, which is a level 5. It's a very strong fortification and very good terrain. If they get up here, it may not matter, but, we'll see. We've also got troops fortifications, AI fortifications up here to guard against the Finns, but we're not losing the Northern Front by that much. We'll see if that actually ends up mattering. Okay, reinforcements. Yeah, so we've got a ton of reinforcements to commit around Moscow, more than we actually need probably. We're going to have a large amount heading into the Northwestern Front, probably at least 3 divisions in here, at least, and then some more divisions in the center. We're also going to need at least 3, probably 6 divisions up towards the Leningrad front just to help that front out. Via rail, we'll need another 6 divisions likely into the Western Front just so they have some fresh men to feed in here and to get some of these terrible depleted units off the line and refitting. Our Southwestern Front's doing pretty well, but we could use a couple of spare divisions in this area, this region, and we could use more divisions in this region. The Southern Front, I think, can hold for now, though we may send them a couple just as a bone. This area is weak, but I think sending extra divisions there is going to be a waste because once this rail line falls, it's just swamps, and then we can defend behind rivers, so that won't be a big concern. These are our Moscow militiamen. They are going to be sitting around. I don't know if I showed you how we distributed them, but the 31st Army, which is in charge of this outer defense of Moscow, is just going to be kind of pre-fortifying some of these areas. It's a long way from the Germans, but I will use the Moscow militia as Moscow militia. Kind of funny. Let's see. And I'm just going to quick check of our reserves. Not going to go through all... Jesus Christ, all this with you, but we do have some more reserve units that we're going to have to assign to the front. So that's that. 9 divisions into the Leningrad area, 2 divisions in this northern section, another 8 divisions, 7 or 8. Actually, I think this is a brigade. No, one of them's brigade. So less than that, into the Northwestern Front's midsection. 3 divisions to reinforce the Northwestern Front around Smolensk. A bunch of divisions headed in. 7 divisions headed in to reinforce... No, not 7 divisions. 10 divisions headed in to reinforce the Western Front around Smolensk. And a pile of divisions strung out because I started to run out of rail points, headed towards the southern and southwestern front, and more incoming. So we have lots of reinforcements. We'll see if they do us any good. I'm going to hit the depots, and then it'll be the AI's turn.